Alright, so we're continuing to work with systems of equations. This time we're going to solve with something called elimination. So remember, one solution is when you solve and you get an x value and a y value. Remember, no solutions and infinite solutions, the variables are gone. Just like when we learned substitution. Remember, I'd have like 5 equals 3 for a no solution because it's false. Or I'm going to get something like 5 equals 5 for an infinite solution because it's real and it's all answers work and it's true. Okay, so here's the kind of the steps. The first thing you do is you got to decide which one you want to eliminate. What's nice about these problems is you can really choose either variable. There's going to be some that are easier than others, and so you'd like to try and make it easier, but the process that we learn will work for all of them. So once you do that, you get those variables to have the same coefficient, but they have to have different signs. So what should happen is I should have something like a 2x and a negative 2x. And so then I'll be able to cross them off. All right. Once you cross them off, you're able to solve, and then you plug back in. So let's go ahead and do a couple so you understand what I'm saying, because it can be a little confusing. So if I look at number 1, if you notice, I look at my x's, which are 8 and 3, and my y's, which are 1 and negative 1. Well, those already have the same number and different signs, so I can just cross those off. Now I do my math. 8x plus 3x is 11x, and negative 16 and a positive 5 is a negative 11. So I divide by 11, and so I get x is negative 1. So I just found my first answer. Now to find my second answer, I have to plug this in. Now I can plug it into either equation. It really doesn't matter. I usually will plug it into the one that does not have negative variables, but you can do either one. So I'm going to plug it into this one here. So it's going to be 8 times x plus y is negative 16. Well, my x value is negative 1, so I get negative 8 plus y is negative 16. To get rid of a negative 8, I'm going to add 8 on both sides. And so y is negative 8. And so I found my answer. So this is the first type of problem where it's the easiest type of problem because you already have the same number, different signs. Okay, let's look at number 2. For number 2, the ones that are close to being the same, go back, are the y's. But the issue is they're both positive, and the only way I can get rid of them is if I make one of them negative. And so what I do, I'm just going to make the bottom one negative. But here's the thing, if I make the bottom negative, I have to make everything on the bottom negative. And so now that's gone, and a negative 1x and a negative 2x is a negative 3x, and 1 minus 4 is negative 3. So now I'm going to divide by negative 3, and so I get x is 1. And so I just found the first answer. Now what I need to do is I need to plug in 1 into one of those. I'm probably going to choose this one here, because I've played around with this bottom one and I don't want to get confused on what I'm supposed to plug in. So I'm going to just plug in for the one that I haven't done anything with. So negative 1 with the x plus y is 1. And so my x value is 1. So that's negative 1 plus y is 1. To get rid of a minus 1, I add 1. And so y is 2. So for the second problem, all I had to do was change signs so that I was able to put things together and eliminate them. Okay, let's go to another color. Let's go to black this time. Let's look at number 3. Okay, we're going to need some more space. All right, so for number 3, if you notice, I already have my y's the same. I have a positive 2y and a negative 2y. And they're different signs. So I can go ahead and just cross them off. And so now 1x plus 3x is 4x. 4 plus 4 is 8. So when I divide by 4, x is 2. So there's the first answer. Now again, I can pick either one of those to solve. So I'm going to pick the top one because it's a little easier. So it's 1 times my x value plus 2y is 4. So I'm going to plug in a 2 here. And so 1 times 2 is 2. To get rid of the positive 2, I'm going to subtract 2. And now I have to get rid of that 2 by dividing by 2. So y is 1. So I'd like you to try number 4 on your own. Just determine what you're going to get the same to cross off. And then we'll go from there. Okay, so hopefully what you noticed is that my y's were already the same number. But that means I needed to change a sign, so I'm going to change the bottom. But if I change the bottom, I change all the bottoms. So that makes this 3 become a positive. And so 3 minus 1 is 2x. My y's are gone. And 3 plus 3 is 6. So I'm going to divide by 2. And I get x is 3. And so now there's my first answer. And so now what I need to do is plug it in. And again, I'm usually going to plug it into the one that I didn't touch. So it's 3 times x plus 3y is 3. And my x value is 3. So that gives me 9 plus 3y is 3. I'm going to minus 9 on both sides. So 3y is negative 6. And I'm going to divide by 3. So y is negative 2. And that's it. All right. So there are some harder ones that we're going to do in just a second. I just want to make sure you have all those copied down. Okay, so what's happened sometimes is you're going to have problems where I don't have an x or a y the same. So what you have to do is you have to make a decision on which one you're going to get the same. For number 5, I would probably choose the y's just because they're smaller numbers. And when you choose smaller numbers, they're a little bit easier to deal with. Okay, so when I look at my 1y and 3y, the number that I can make them the same, I can make them both 3y's. Now the other thing that you have to do is that you want one to be positive and one to be negative. And so I'm just going to change one. And so I'm going to make the bottom one negative. So now what you do is you ask yourself, what did you multiply 1 by to get 3? Well, I times it by 3. So that means everything on the top gets times by 3. I'm distributing. So I get negative 21x, positive 3y, and then 3 times 19 is 57, so negative 57. And then this one, to get from a positive 3 to a negative 3, I times by negative 1. So everything has to be times by negative 1. So that gives me a positive 2x, a negative 3, and a positive 19. So now my y's are the same, so I can cross them off. And then, my x's are the same also. A negative, oh no, it's not. That's not a 21. That's just a 2. And so negative 21 plus 2 is a negative 19x. And then 57 and 19 gives you a negative 38. And I divide by negative 19, and I get x is 2. So it's still kind of the same process, but what happens is this first step, you have to force things to be the same number. And if you're ever not sure what they both go into, you could just multiply them, and that will work also. So now what I need to do is I need to plug it in. I'm going to plug it into the first equation right here, and really you can plug it into the first, second, third, or fourth. It doesn't matter. They're all work. But I'm going to do the first one. Negative 7 times x plus y is equal to negative 19. Well, we just found out x was 2. So I get negative 14 plus y is negative 19. And so I'm going to add 14 to both sides, which will give me y is negative 5. And there's my answer. Okay. All right, so when I look at number 6, where's my mouse? I can either get the x's the same or the y's the same. I think the one I'm going to do this time is the x's because I can make 9 easily. If I got the y's the same, I'd have to make 35, and 35 is a pretty big number. So what I'm going to have is I'm going to have a 9x and a 9x. One of them has to be positive and one has to be negative. I tend to keep the bottom one negative. So now I look, what did I multiply negative 3x by to get a positive 9x? Well, I multiplied by negative 3. So remember, now I distribute to everything in that equation. And so I get positive 9x. Oops, let's make that a negative 21. And then 16 times 3 is 48. But because they're two negatives, it becomes positive 48. Oh, and I forgot my y there. Okay, so now what did I have to do to this 9x to get negative 9x? Nothing. It was the same. So this one, you're just multiplying by 1, which keeps everything the same, which is nice. So my 9x's are gone, and I get negative 16y is equal to 64. And I divide by negative 16, and so I get y is negative 4. So I just found the second answer. Now remember, when I plug it in, I can plug it into any of those 4 equations. But I tend to use one of the first ones because if I made a mistake here, or I might not be able to read my handwriting, it might make it worse. So I'm going to do negative 3x plus 7 times y, which happens to be 4, equals negative 16. So negative 3x plus 28 is equal to negative 16. I'm going to minus 28 on both sides. And I think I made a mistake somewhere. Oops, that's what it is. It's a negative 4. Because I knew those numbers were getting too big. And so that's a negative 28. So I add 28. That makes more sense. And so negative 16 plus 28 is 12. And when I divide by negative 3, I get negative 4. So my answer for this problem was negative 4. So the first thing you guys are going to have to decide is which variable you're going to get the same. And then you make it the same. Like I did here, I made, where did my cursor go? Like right here, I made them a positive 3y and a negative 3y. And this one here, I made a 9x and a negative 9x. So you start off by doing that. And once you make the equations work out by multiplying, then it's a basic elimination problem like the previous ones you've done.